Picking up where we left off understanding that in tort law, remedies are compensatory, we often call out-of-pocket, and punitive. Restitution, in contract law, restitution is usually easy because you've given somebody in advance, for example. You've done something for them that they haven't paid you for yet, and you don't have a contract or something for it. So restitution, give me back my stuff, even if you have a contract. So restitution is give me back my stuff. So in contract law, it's just a question of, are you entitled to your stuff back? And if you are, you give back. You don't even have actual clauses for foreseeable, unavoidable. None of those issues. So in contract law, restitution is fairly straightforward. Give me back my stuff, and you just kind of figure out what stuff to give them back. In tort law, restitution is more complicated. It's more complicated because many times in tort situations, you have, in fact, the person has in fact taken your stuff, like in conversion, unlawful detainer, where they're occupying your property, or replevin, where they've got your personal property. So sometimes the person has got stuff that belongs to you. Okay, but other times, as I mentioned earlier, there are situations where I have simply benefited from an intentional wrong against you, and you can get that also just to keep me from having it. Not really restoring to you anything that ever belonged to you, is just to keep me from having it. And that doctrine is called equitable restitution. So two kinds of restitution here, ordinary restitution and equitable restitution. So looking at the ordinary restitutions first, one of the first ones is ejectment. Ejectment is when the sheriff says, the judge says to the sheriff, go out there and put those people, eject those people off of Blackacre and restore it to the rightful owners. That's ejectment. You're giving people back their real property. Replevin. Replevin is the same thing for personal property. Give me back, you got my personal property. The court could say to the sheriff, go out there at Joe's house, take the Mona Lisa off the wall, and bring it back here to court. Okay? That's replevin. Same thing like ejectment, only it's for personal property rather than real property. Other devices for getting your stuff back. There is self-help. And as you know, you cannot breach the peace, so there's some limitations on when you're entitled to self-help and how far you can go in self-help, but it's a way to get your stuff back. How about some other ways to get your stuff back? Well, there is the constructive trust. There is the equitable lien. We'll talk about both of those in just a second. And then there is equitable restitution. And mandatory injunction. Okay, so these are the devices for either getting your stuff back or telling the intentional wrongdoer you can't keep the benefits. We understand about ejectment, replevin, and self-help. We want to talk next about constructive trust and equitable lien. If I have defrauded you of $10,000, and you can trace the $10,000 that I got from you so that you can prove that I used it to buy some Exxon stock with the $10,000 I defrauded you. Now, let's suppose that this stock goes up in price to $15,000. I bought it at 10, it's worth 15. And now, you, the victim, discover the fraud, and you want it back, want your stuff back. Now, I've defrauded you of $10,000, and so why can't I just say to you, well, gee, I defrauded you of $10,000, I bought the stock, here, you can have your $10,000 out of the stock, and I'll keep the $5,000 profit that has accumulated over time. So I end up getting $5,000. You get your $10,000 back, but I get to keep the $5,000 profit. And that obviously is me benefiting from the theft, from the conversion, from the fraud. So you don't want to do it that way. So your rule is not going to allow that. You're not going to let me keep the $5,000 profit. If I took the $10,000 and I bought Blackacre, and it was worth $10,000 when I bought it, and it's now worth $20,000, well, you're going to give all of Blackacre to the victim. You can't let me keep the profits. And so the mechanism that we use to do that is we say, I will use your money to buy Blackacre, use your money to buy the stock, that I have the legal title to it, but the court declares that I hold it in trust for you. I hold it in trust for you, the legal title. And that I now, when the court creates this trust, this constructive trust, where I hold this property in trust for you because I used your money to buy it, so then, and the court tells me, Emerson, as trustee, you have one duty. And that is, you got 30 days to convey the title to these beneficiaries. So that's a mechanism for you getting your money back. And not only do you get your $10,000 back, for whatever profits will come out of it, you can get that also. You get the whole thing. Problem is, suppose the stock has gone down in value instead of up. Suppose Blackacre has gone down in value instead of up. If you use a constructive trust and take Blackacre in the way we talked about, where the court makes me a trustee of Blackacre and I transfer it to you in place of the $10,000, but now if Blackacre is only worth $6,000, well, you got Blackacre and your $10,000 debt is wiped out. Okay? So if Blackacre has gone down in value or gone up in value, it doesn't matter. If you use a constructive trust, what you get is Blackacre. Or if a part of your money went into Blackacre, then you get a part of it that way. So, so the point is that when you use a constructive trust, if the property that where you want to make me the trustee of it, you only want to make me the trustee of that property for you if it has increased in value. Otherwise, it would be foolish, but you can do it. Secondly, suppose I have defrauded you of $10,000, and I take this $10,000 and I put a new roof on my house. I take this $10,000 and I put a new motor in my Rolls Royce. Well, now you can see what happens. That you can't make me a trustee of the Rolls Royce. You can't make me a trustee of Blackacre, where I used your money to put a new roof on, because I did not use your money to acquire the title. And since I did not use your money to acquire the title, then you can't use a constructive trust. Yes, I did use your money to improve my Rolls Royce by putting a new motor. I did use your money to improve my house by putting a new roof on it. And so you have a special claim on my Rolls Royce. You have a special claim on my house that's a higher claim than my other creditors because your money is now part of that. It went into the house. So if the house gets sold, you should get your money out first before any other creditors. Okay? And so your claim against my house, your claim against the car, where I have used your money to improve the car, I've used your money to put a new roof on, you are said to have an equitable lien against that property. An equitable lien, which is a very high priority lien, comes in ahead of everybody except another kind of mechanic's lien. It's in effect a mechanic's lien. So you can have an equitable lien. Now, if I use your money to buy Blackacre, you have a choice whether you want to use a constructive trust. Because if I use your money to get the title, you can use a constructive trust, but you don't have to. You can choose an equitable lien if you want. Now, if you choose an equitable lien, then you just have an equitable lien on Blackacre for $10,000. And if Blackacre has gone down in value, so it's only worth $6,000, well, when you foreclose on your equitable lien and sell Blackacre, you will get $6,000. And you're still owed $4,000, and you become a general creditor like everybody else as to that $4,000. Okay. And likewise in the stock case, where if I use your money to acquire title to the stock, you can use a constructive trust and have the court declare that I'm holding the stock for you as trustee. But you only want to do that if the stock has gone up in value. If it's gone down in value, you're better off to just take an equitable lien against the stock, sell it, get what you can, and become a regular creditor for whatever the balance is. Okay. Now, so that is how constructive trust and equitable liens can be used. But one of the things that comes up on the bar exam is a constructive trust is that they'll put some tracing in here. So that if I use your money, if I use your money to I defrauded you of $10,000, and you can follow it into Blackacre, and then I sold back Blackacre and bought some stock, and I sold the stock and I bought an airplane. As long as you can trace your money into the airplane, okay, then you can impose a constructive trust or equitable lien on the airplane. But to use either of those, constructive trust or equitable lien, you've got to be able to trace your money into that item. Now, the tracing, of course, can be made very simple. The bar examiners can just tell you that we took the money from Blackacre and we bought an airplane. Okay, well, there's nothing else to say. We're tracing. But the bar examiners can say the money that was defrauded from you was put into a bank account, and there was some other money in the bank account. So you now got a bank account with 2 or 3 kinds of money in it, and when someone starts spending money out of that bank account, whose money was being spent? And that's the way the problem usually comes up. So I defraud you of some money, and I put it in the bank account, and it's got some of my money already in there. So now we have your money and my money in the same bank account, and when I start spending it, whose money did I spend? And that's the way the tracing issue usually happens. Also, sometimes after I have spent money, maybe a lot of your money, if I now put the money back into the account, does that replenish your money, or is it no longer traceable? And the answer is it turns on intent to replenish. If I've spent some of your money out of that bank account and I put some back in there with the intent to replenish your money, then yeah, you can still trace. For example, someone who has a trust fund, a trustee has a trust fund, and takes money out of the trust fund to go pay the horses one day, expecting to make a big profit and put it right back. And indeed, maybe the person did make a profit. In any event, they did come and put it back. Okay. Well, that's replenishment. They intended to put that money back, hoping not to get caught. So when the money was put back, if it was put back with the intent to replenish what was taken out, then you can continue to trace through that event. But if there was no intent to replenish, then no, that money that was put back in there will be available to the general creditors. You won't have any special claim on it. Okay. So we are here then looking at restitutionary devices, and I'm saying to you is that this is where the bar exam questions come down most commonly. Constructive trust issues with tracing. In particular, we'll see some of that tonight. Equitable lien and constructive trust. These both, the tracing applies to these two. Equitable restitution we haven't talked about, and let's talk about it now. This equitable restitution is also called quasi contract sometimes. And here's what's going on. What has happened is the hypothetical I gave you a few minutes ago. I was paid $1,000 to commit an intentional tort against you. And if I'm paid to commit an intentional tort against you, you find out about it. Besides all the other bad things you can do to me, you can also take away that $1,000 I got to commit this intentional tort. The basic public policy is that I cannot make a living. The society will not agree to let me make a living by committing intentional torts. I'm going to make a living, beating people up, make a living for doing whatever, and you can't, if you don't make a living committing intentional torts from getting paid to commit intentional torts, no. Society doesn't tolerate that. So, if I am paid to commit an intentional tort against you, the payment that I got for doing that, besides everything else you can get from me, you can take that away too. And that is called equitable restitution. Equitable restitution. It's not ordinary restitution, because in ordinary restitution, it's really give me back my stuff. And as you can see, this is not give me back my stuff. Okay? This is, society doesn't want you to keep it. It's called equitable restitution. And the final here is the mandatory injunction. This is the case where the court might very well say to a person, give it back. And that would be a mandatory injunction. One way to get it back. Okay, so we understand the principles here, and let's talk about some sources where bar questions come from, and then let's look at some questions. Let's look over here at in contract law. Right here, the foreseeability element, right here. Okay. Now let's talk about where problems come from. Breach of contract, remedies problem. It is common for the bar examiners to have you determine, to calculate actual damages. So they'll give you some numbers, and you don't have to do anything fancy, but subtraction may very well be required. Nothing much fancier than that. Where they'll tell you, what the first contractor offered to do the job for, and they breached, and they got somebody else to do it, and how much they charged. And so therefore, how much has the homeowner overpaid, and who can I sue for the damages? So basic arithmetic, adding and subtracting is about as far as it ever goes, but they will often require you to calculate actual damages. The causal part is usually not a problem. Foreseeable, it is very common for the bar examiners to give you some damages which were where there's a serious question as to whether or not they are recoverable. In other words, you can recover general damages. They ask you to determine the general damages, calculate, what they are. But down here, were these damages foreseeable when the contract was formed? This is very common, like the musician cases I told you about, where it will make it tricky for you to be careful to see what damages were foreseeable when the contract was formed. So this is a very common area of testing. In fact, why don't we mark some of these in red, the areas that are the most common areas of testing. So here, and then foreseeability, this is commonly and frequently tested. Then the duty to mitigate damages, that is tested some, yes. Incidental damages is not tested hardly ever, maybe on the multi-stress part. Liquidated damages is tested from time to time. We talked about it last week. Reliance damages is once in a great while this is tested. But the reliance damages brings up so much numerical material, because if I am the star performer and you're going to promote my performance like before, and you spend $30,000 on promotion fees, and I breach, and you were going to make $100,000 if I had performed, and you had already given me an advance of $10,000. You got so many numbers, and the bar examiners don't want to turn this into an accounting exam. And so because of that, these things like incidental damages and reliance damages are seldom tested. If they are, you just describe them, and rather than expect numbers, but they're seldom tested. Restitution, giving back to myself, specific performance, yeah, they test this all the time. Okay. So in contract law, those are the places you would expect testing, where it commonly happens. Calculating damages. Were these damages foreseeable when the contract was formed? Did you do what was reasonable to avoid further damages? Liquidated damages and specific performance. Now, looking at tort law, what's tested for tort remedies, compensatory damages, they never ask you to calculate them, they just ask you to describe. I think these pens don't write better than that. So they'll ask you to describe, not to calculate compensatory damages. Punitive damages, same thing, just talk about them. They'll never ask you to calculate those. Under restitution, the ones which are tested are here, here, and here, these three. Constructor trust, equitable liens, equitable restitution, including the tracing. And the most common tracing that is tested is tracing through some source where the money becomes mixed, like a bank account where you have several kinds of money in there, and then someone starts spending it. The question is whose money was spent. Okay, so that's our review of remedies, and let's take a look at some questions and put all this stuff to use. Let me begin with the question from July 91, one of the questions assigned for tonight. Would you take a look at the July 91 question with the Henry, Susan, and INSCO and the Red Cross? I'll give you a minute to review your notes on July 91 question. Let me put it here on the board. Okay. Allow you 3 or 4 minutes to look back at your notes, please. look at this question together. Question from July 91 bar. And that question from the July 91 bar, we will read and analyze as we go. Henry was an agent for INSCO. Over a period of time, can we back up for just 1 second? We just finished talking about how to look at the analysis when it's tort remedy, these 3 things, and what to do if it's a contract remedy, those 3 things. But there is a still more fundamental problem structure of your analysis that I want to convey to you. I think people know this, but let's make sure it's on the board. That is that in a remedies question, what you do is, number 1, is you establish the wrong. That's step 1. What did the person supposedly do wrong? Then you seek whatever remedy you hope to get. The wrong is either someone, committing a tort or breaching a contract or doing something of that sort. So the bar examiners are violating somebody's constitutional rights. So the bar examiners set up these remedies questions in such a way that somebody has always done something wrong to begin with, to even be entitled to a remedy. And so you have to establish that wrong to begin with. Now the bar examiners can make this process of establishing the wrong, they can make that any place from 0 to 100% of the problem. This can be from 0 to 100%. Because the bar examiners can make this, for example, a problem about torts. And all you have to do is establish the tort. Or defamation. All you have to do is to establish the defamation. Or a violation of a constitutional right. So they ask you about a bunch of constitutional rights. Or a violation of a breach of contract. So you establish the wrong, and they can end the problem there by not even asking you about the remedies. On the other hand, the bar examiners in the alternative can give you the wrong so that establishing the remedy can be 0 to 100% of the problem. They can simply say to you, A committed fraud against B, and here's what he did with the money. Well, they told you what the wrong was. So you can see that the bar examiners now have a choice of how complex they want to make each part of this problem. And they can put it any place from 0 throughout the middle to the end. And you simply have to make a judgment about what are they really asking you to do here. And they usually, if it's a remedies problem, they will make it very easy to establish the wrong. For example, if the wrong is something such as interference with contract, well, that's a tort. But if they tell you that A wrote a letter to C saying, "Dear C, I will pay you money if you will prevent that contract from being performed," well, how hard is it to establish inducing breach of contract? So they can give you the facts, which make it very easy, but you still got to do it. Okay? They don't tell you what the wrong is. They just give you the conduct of the people. You have to fit it onto the legal structure and say what the wrong was. And so you do that. And then comes the remedies. And the remedies will either be, even if someone has violated a constitutional right, the remedies are still the contract or the tort remedies. The tort remedies usually. So getting back to here, we said that for breach of contract, this is what you do. For tort remedies, the testing is here, here, and here. And we understand each of these. And the one last thing we didn't do here is under injunction. There are three parts to this that are tested. Is the TRO, the preliminary injunction, and the injunction. Now let's look at problems. And these are tested. These are. So if we're going to put a red circle around the things which are tested, this would be among them. Okay. Plus over here, these things. Test it. Okay, with that in mind, let's look at some problems. We're looking at the problem from July 91. Henry was an agent of an insurance company. Over a period of several months, he embezzled a total of $50,000. Now, one of the things you need to be careful here about is that the bar examiner just told you that Henry embezzled some money. But you are not prosecuting him for the crime here. You're just trying to get the insurance company's money back. So you're going to have to show a civil wrong that Henry committed, and then try to get your money back because of a civil wrong that Henry committed. Now, embezzlement, as we know, is a crime. So what the bar examiners expected you to do here was to explain that the person had committed conversion or misappropriation of funds or any civil remedy of that sort will do. But you can't just go on the embezzlement because that's a crime. So, continuing, Henry embezzled a total of $50,000. The shortage in his account was not discovered until Henry died, 1 month after his final embezzlement. Okay, so Henry embezzled $50,000 and then died. So that money is in his estate someplace. So we're going to try to find it probably and try to get it back. And the devices you have for getting his money back, you know what they are. Constructive trust, equitable lien. I mean, you're not going to get ejectment or replevant, I don't think. But constructive trust, equitable lien, those look like possibilities. But let's keep going. But in those cases, if we use a constructive trust or an equitable lien, we're almost surely going to have to do tracing. And the problem is going to be largely about the tracing. And the way the tracing will occur is that the money will be put into some account that is mixed. The money will be put into some account that has some of the victim's money and some of the cook's money. And then when the cook starts spending it, whose money was spent. And that's what you would expect to happen here. So let's continue. Henry gave $50,000 of the embezzled money to the Red Cross. Okay, how do you get that back? You can, let's see, the devices for getting it back are going to come down to these two. If you can show what the Red Cross did with the money, they bought something with that particular $5,000, you can trace into that and make the Red Cross a trustee of that property. That doesn't seem likely on our facts, but we assume the Red Cross has put the money into a bank account someplace. If you can find the particular bank account where the $5,000 was placed, then you could argue for an equitable lien against that bank account because your money went to improve that bank account. You can't get a constructive trust because you don't have a right to title to the whole account, but you have an equitable lien. It's like putting a new motor into the car. So as to the Red Cross, if you can trace the $5,000 into a particular account, you could use an equitable lien against that account to get the $5,000 back. But if you cannot trace the $5,000 into any particular bank account, then you can get a general judgment against the Red Cross for the $5,000. They're donees, you can get it back. And certainly the Red Cross would be able to honor a $5,000 judgment. So against the Red Cross, maybe an equitable lien if you can trace the money. More likely, an ordinary judgment is all you need. So as to the Red Cross, that's where we are. Let's put these notes on. Put some notes on the board here about this. So the point where we are now is that the Red Cross has $5,000. We're going to get $5,000 back from them. We can get that back because Red Cross is a mere donee. If they had been a bona fide purchaser for value, you couldn't do anything about it, but that didn't happen. Continuing. Henry deposited $25,000 of embezzled money in his savings account at bank and had $20,000 of his own money when he made the deposit. So here we go. So into bank, we now have $25,000 of the Red Cross money and $20,000 of Henry's money, so that the total in the account is $45,000, and it's mixed ownership. Now, when you start spending out of an account like this, how do you decide whose money was being spent? How do you decide whose money was being spent? The basic rule is the intent of the drawer. Whoever took the money out and spent it, what was that person's intent? And you often cannot determine their intent, so you use presumptions. But if you knew that person's intent, that's what it really turns on, is the intent of the drawer. And that's true of any mixed accounts. You see where community property and personal property is mixed in an account, and one of the people takes money out, and the question is whose money was taken out. And the basic rule is the intent of the drawer. And the rest of the problem is how do you go about determining that intent. And we have presumptions and things that we use to help determine the intent. So here, if you take money out, if he took some of this money out, well, we know what happened. He went to the racetrack and he spent $30,000 at the racetrack. So he went to the racetrack here, and this is now minus $30,000. So now the balance is $15,000. And so you can see that we need to know whose money was spent at the racetrack. And there are a couple of important doctrines. There's 3 or 4, but only 2 of them are used very much anymore. And the two that are used are, number one, the presumption that the crook used his or her own money first. So our first policy here is that crook used their own money first. So under that presumption that the crook used his own money first, then of this $45,000, Henry had $20,000 in there that was his own money. And it was only after he spent $20,000 of his own money that he began to spend some of the insurance company's money. So he spent his own 20 first, and then spent $10,000 of the insurance company's money. Everybody see that? Under this presumption, Henry spent his own money first, and Henry had $20,000 in the bank account. And after he spent his $20,000, he spent an additional $10,000 because he spent $30,000 altogether. So it was only the last $10,000 that was the insurance company's money. So Henry has spent $10,000 of the insurance company's money, and you can't trace anymore that $10,000. But the $15,000 that's left in here is all Insco's money. So Insco can get an equitable lien on this money because he can trace this much, the $15,000, but cannot get an equitable lien on the missing $10,000 because she lost the ability to trace it because it was spent at the racetrack. So once again, at this point, Henry spent $30,000 at the racetrack. Our first presumption is that the crook used his own money first. In that case, out of the $30,000 that was spent at the racetrack, Henry used his own money first, which is the first 20. Then the second 10 was Insco's money. So 10,000 Insco's money is no longer traceable. But the rest of it, the 15,000, is all still there, and that's all Insco's money, and they can use an equitable lien against the 15,000. Now the second way we tried to determine whose money was spent. Remember, our two problems here are whose money was spent. And the first way we decided whose money was spent was under this presumption. This number one is a presumption. Okay. Number two, we use what is called the lowest intermediate balance. So the lowest intermediate balance. And what you do with this lowest intermediate balance process is you look at the lowest, the account went down, 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 and then maybe went back up. You look at the lowest that it went, and you say, when this account was at its lowest point, how much of the victim's money was still there? And if it's possible for all of it to still be there, then we say the victim's money was still there. But if it's not possible, because it's been spent down below the total amount of money that came from the victim, then what's left is the victim's money, but what has been spent is not traceable. And that really is the same thing as the crook spent his own money first. But the people, I see them written as though they're two different theories, and they're not. It's the same theory, but since people like to see it both ways, give it to them both ways. The lowest intermediate balance method says, look at the lowest intermediate balance and decide, is all of Insco's money still there or not? And the answer here is no. 10,000 of it's missing. It's really the same doctrine. Okay, to finish the problem then, the facts tell us that Henry Using his own money, he bought a lottery ticket and won $15,000 at the lottery. So I'm going to erase some of this here just to make room for the rest of the. So he bought $15,000 at the lottery. So there's a total of $30,000 in the account now. What the bar examiners want you to see is only 15. You can get an equitable lien only on the 15,000, because this was replenishment money here. This is replenishment. So this 15,000 is replenishment money, and you can trace. You can use that for tracing only if, when the person put it back in there, they intended to replenish it. And I don't think Henry intended to replenish, because Henry didn't think he was going to get caught. So to finish up the problem then, Henry spent $10,000 on an insurance policy that had a face value of $100,000. He used embezzled money to buy the insurance policy. He died, and now his wife is going to get the $100,000 from the insurance policy, but he paid for the insurance policy with the embezzled money. So are you going to give the insurance company the entire $100,000 or not? Once again, let me point out the problem. Henry used $10,000 of the insurance company's embezzled money. He used that $10,000 not to buy stock this time, not to buy Blackacre this time, but to buy an insurance policy. Then he died, and the insurance policy is now worth $100,000. Who gets the $100,000 is the question. Now, they had her buy a CD with it, and so you don't care what form it's in. You can easily trace it through whatever forms it took. I think she bought a CD or something. That doesn't matter. The thing is that what really matters is who's going to get that $100,000. And the insurance company is going to say, we have a right to get the $100,000 because it was our money that bought the policy, and that he was, in effect, buying the policy for us, just like he could have bought Blackacre for us. That'll be their position. Will that win? I don't know. Because one argument against that is that the insurance company, if they had had their own $10,000, could not have bought an insurance policy on Henry's life. You know, except maybe as an employee or something, at high level. But ordinarily, you can't just go around buying insurance policies on people. So you have to have an insurable interest. And the insurance company had no insurable interest. So they couldn't have bought the policy. So maybe you shouldn't give them the benefit of the policy. I don't know. Anyway, that's the arguments on both sides. It doesn't matter how you come out. And that's how this problem is done. When we come back from our break, we will do another problem. Notice that this problem was about constructive trust and equitable liens. Remember, we said this problem was about constructive trust and equitable liens, and you had to trace through a bank account that had mixed money in it and decide, and you had some replenishment in there, and that's what they were testing in this case. Now, when we come back from our break, let's continue this analysis. Let's go to the question from the February 1985 bar. February 85 is the one we're going to go to. February. Now, I want to leave these two things up during the break, so I'll put it up here. I'll put it right here. February 85. That's where we're going. That's one with Al and Betty.